Just what are the chances that Fire Huska chants start taking over the Saddle Dome before the end of the season?
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Today, I thought we would unpack the biggest game of this season against the Vancouver Canucks, as well as the consequences of some of Ryan Huska's roster management decisions, as well as Connor Zary's upcoming 2-game suspension. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcast, as well as YouTube. We're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. And let's dive right into this. What a game against the Canucks. I had high expectations, and I would say that they were met in some capacity, but and not just let me down because they lost, but I thought that there were some shortcomings throughout the night and just poor performances defensively. But losing in a shootout was avoidable. The third period kind of just fell apart. The Flames fell apart in the third period. For the most part, for most of the game, it felt like it was going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then the Flames took a nice lead, took the 3-2 lead, and that was it. Vancouver scored late in the game. Overtime was interesting. I don't really I don't know. Again, it could have been avoided. Great that the Flames got a point. Not great that Vancouver ended up getting 2 points, but we're still leaving the rink with a point when the wild card race is as tight as it is. But let's talk about some positives because while it was not the outcome we all wanted, there were some highlight performances. Jonathan Huberdeau and Nazem Kadri just had like legacy games, to be dramatic, but they both played like the old Huberdeau, the old Kadri, like the players that you were hoping you would see on this team. And I couldn't believe it. Jonathan Huberdeau had 2 goals. They both had 2 goals, I believe. And I apologize. Huberdeau had 2 goals. Kadri had 1. Huberdeau had goals on the power play, as well as a third shorthanded goal on the season with a gorgeous pass from Kevin Rooney. I thought it really they've stepped up big time, while the rest of the Flames offense is kind of flubbing around and putting on an invisibility cloak. Kadri and Huberdeau have just surged, and I am impressed. Blake Coleman, although he is not on the score sheet, his last few games he has had some very impressive blocks, and they look like they hurt really bad. Like they probably should wrap him in like a million ice packs on his way home from the rink. But he will take the stinger and go back to the bench, catch his breath, and he's good to go. I cannot imagine how sore he is. Last night he had 2 blocks and 4 hits. Even when he's not on the score sheet, he is still contributing in some way. And I think that is something that should not go overlooked. Also, Mikael Backlund left the game in the first period after getting hit. Uh, just said an upper body injury. What part of the upper body? That's up to you to decide, but there was no update even today. Just undergoing further evaluation. Obviously hope he is doing well. I think what stinks with this is obviously, like, your captain's out, but from the sounds of it, leading up to the Four Nations break, he was dealing with something, and it was very obvious in his play. And then, you come back and you play 4 or 5 games, and then you get hurt. Like, you're finally playing a little bit better and more like yourself, and then you get slammed, and you might not be right for the rest of the season. So, I do think that stinks big time. A lot of the team looked invisible out there. I'm not going to lie to you. The decor, I do not know who is paying people to talk so highly about the defensive system of this team, but if you can figure out how to write me a check, I may consider saying those things too. I'm only kidding. But in all seriousness, the game just fell apart in the third period. Fell apart every time there was a defensive misstep, whether it was a turnover, a giveaway, a misplayed puck. It just was not pretty. And I mean, that's all you can really say about it, because we have seen this group kind of continue to crumble and fall apart. They're not what they used to be, and it's something that needs a little bit of tweaking, and maybe not employing 3, 6, or 7 defensemen and expecting them to play top 4 minutes. And yeah, it's, I don't know. I thought Kevin Ball would just be like a third pairing, maybe second pairing. Joel Hanley has no business being on your top pairing, but whatever. This is Ryan Huska's world, and we just live in it. Speaking of Ryan Huska, we're going to talk about some of his decision making and just how costly I think it's becoming here on Locked On Flames. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy, just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsor job posts. Put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in the spot where, there needs to be a hire immediately and the pressure is on, and every day without the right person is just, it's a pretty big setback. That's exactly when Indeed's sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Have you ever checked your bank account and wonder, where did all of my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it is very easy to lose track. And that is where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it is a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long term goals. That is super helpful, and managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. That's an important one, especially if you're looking to buy a house and start a life together. Frivolous spending might not be great. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Just use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNHL for half off of your first year. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. And can we just talk about uh the hypocrites, the double standard of Ryan Huska's decision making? Because I think that if previous coaches, let's say Daryl Sutter, made some of the decisions like putting Connor Zary on the fourth line for multiple games after really not doing anything to deserve the demotion, I think people would be calling for Daryl Sutter's job. Okay. What are we doing with Ryan Huska? The penalty kill, which is his specialty, is trash. The forward groups, trash. The defensive groups, trash. The only thing that is keeping him out of this conversation of losing his job is Dustin Wolf. People put on the blinders and say, wow, Ryan Huska is doing such a good job. His team is doing such a great job and he's just scoring. Wow, can you imagine being projected to be a bottom 5 team and now you're in the mix for a wild card spot? Like the blinders are on in full force, and last night's decision to put Sharon Govich and Anderson out in the shootout was enough to prove that. I think that it, we have seen mismanagement. We have seen, Mikael Backlund leading the team in ice time. We've seen Connor Zary not being used as a center. Um, the defensive pairings being what they have been, and like I mentioned before, the penalty kill being as atrocious as it is. And mind you, it was like 5 minutes before midnight when the shootout started. And I'm thinking to myself, once overtime ended, I'm like, okay, probably going to send out probably Kadri, probably Coronato, and probably Zary, or maybe Huberdeau, and some sort of variation of those three. Yegor Sharangovich has played with no confidence this year. He has struggled. He does not have a clean shot. He does not. Like, when I think of sending the Flames to a shootout, my first 5 thoughts do not include Yegor Sharangovich. Maybe 6 or 7 shot, like, thoughts later. But you're telling me that you don't go with 2 of your sharpshooters, 2 players on your team that have the best shot, some of the best and most accurate shot on your team. To me, this was almost as embarrassing as Daryl Sutter sending out Nick Ritchie in that shootout last game of the season with the season on the line. Like, what kind of tomfoolery, debauchery, roster mismanagement is that? If I was Craig Conroy and I saw that, I would just sit there, and I know Craig Conroy is a very nice and kind gentleman, and I'm sure Ryan Huska is as well. But you can't make excuses for that. You cannot. The win column group chat was blowing up. Everyone was so confused and perplexed, and so were many other hockey minds on the internet. Like, this isn't just a why wasn't Zary or Coronato out there? This is a what is the thought process behind this decision making? Are there any thoughts? What is driving these decisions? I I can't even like look at this and try to justify it. Like, yeah, has Anderson, looked a little better with his shooting? Yeah, absolutely. But do you know who has looked better consistently all season and who has had great success in extra hockey? Matt Coronato. Like, Justin Kirkland wasn't out there, bud, so you couldn't really count on him there. And the misuse of these players is fascinating to me because I feel like we had moved past this. We had moved past keeping our young, promising top 6 players on the fourth line. We had moved past playing favorites or, you know, taking a risky chance that makes little to no sense. It just does not add up. I do not think that Connor Zary should be on the fourth line, and we're going to talk about him a little bit later. But to me, I saw Zary's play regress last night while he was playing on the fourth line, and I don't think that's a reason why you shouldn't have sent him out in a shootout. I don't. I don't think that you should necessarily punish a player. Um, he was playing frustrated, and the only thing that I could honestly think of was, like, fourth line typical fourth liner behavior, like, rubbing off on him, kind of like Martin Pospisil rubbing off on him and just, like, I don't wanna say, like, the bad influence, but he was not playing like Connor Zary last night because he had to play an entirely different type of game when you're on the fourth line. So, coming up next, we're going to talk more about Connor Zary and his upcoming 2-game suspension after elbowing the other Pedersen in the back of the head. Because, again, why make smart decisions? March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who is cutting down the nets. I think that, just you get to stay in on the action with FanDuel, and doesn't matter if you miss tip off or you're counting on a fourth quarter comeback, you can get in on the action with FanDuel. With tournaments tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me today. Make sure you're following me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Jess Belmosto. Connor Zary decided to elbow someone in the back of the head last night, early on in the game, which is just straight up irresponsible. If you've listened to this show any number of times, you know that one of my biggest gripes with the league and players or player safety in general is the headshots, whether it's intentional or uh, an accident or the inconsistent punishments and suspensions, whatever the case may be. Brain injuries are not good. They are bad, and repeated head injuries are even worse. So Connor Zary is suspended for 2 games after elbowing EP, the defenseman, in the head. I guess I don't even know what to say other than it was just completely uncalled for. Sure, the Canucks laid out a hit on Kadri. It was clean. It wasn't one where he was necessarily hurt or anything like that. It was just frustration that had built up and bubbled over into an emotional situation that it didn't need to. If you're going to stand up for a teammate, I don't think that elbowing someone in the back of the head where they can't even see you, is a good move. It's a cheap shot. It's gross. And you look like a scumbag. Connor Zary, I'm a big fan, but just calling it as I see it. Should he have been ejected for that irresponsible play? More than likely. I mean, how many times have we seen I think back to last season when Andrew Mangiapane cross-checked Jared McCann in the back of the head, back of the neck, and he got tossed out of the game and then suspended for another. I'm sorry, but Zary should have been tossed for 1 and then probably suspended for 1 or 2 games. It just drives me bananas because it's not just about the game. It's not. It is about setting a precedent for player safety. And it just doesn't sit right with me when things like that happen. I think a lot of it comes back to Mark Savard, for me watching him in his career end because of another concussion. Same thing with Tim Thomas, Martin Pospisil. It's not something you want to see. And you never know which hit to the head could be the end of it. You don't know. It could be just right. And I watched the replay a few times because I didn't really notice it at first. Was more kind of concerned with whatever else was happening. And I think what was so frustrating is this isn't who Connor Zary is. Connor Zary is I don't think he's been in the league long enough to say a respected player or a respectable player, but he plays a clean game. He isn't out there. He isn't Martin Pospisil towing that fine line, and you're not having to kind of pull him back in and be like, stop it. And he's a dog and spray him with a water bottle to correct this action. That's not who he is. I think there was a level of frustration that was new for him. And that's not an excuse at all. I do think his emotions got the best of him. And that's not going to fly. That's not how you're going to have a good long-term career in the NHL. You have to breathe and play a disciplined game. If you want to fight someone, sure. Whatever. Cheap shotting them in the back of the head with your elbow is not it's not going to solve any of your problems. And I think that the poor discipline on Zary's behalf is just the start of what could transpire if you keep him on the 4th line and limiting his minutes when he should be playing much higher up in your lineup, close to probably the top skater, or I guess forward in minutes because it's he hasn't seen 17 minutes of ice time since January. It is the middle of March. So that'll do it for me here on today's episode of Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. And the next game is the Pride game against the Colorado Avalanche. So we'll be back tomorrow to wrap up the week with some game previews, some thoughts on the week, and really anything else that hits the timeline. Have a great night.